Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Inshallah today group 13 will present the leadership of Sultan Salahuddin Al-Ayyubi and will presented by me, Afiq Aiman bin J. Asmadi. The second one is Faris Wazif bin Yusaini, Muhammad Luqman Hakim bin Rizman, Muhammad Firdaus bin Ahmad, Muhammad Najmi Zarif bin Zaharuddin. So let's get started.
First, for introduction, the spread of Islamic teaching throughout the world stems from the beginning of the leadership of Prophet Muhammad, who has given a very big factor to the spread of Islam. The story of his life and leadership has been a major factor in the emergence of great Islamic figures who have made their own sacrifice in spreading Islam throughout the world until now. The birth of a leader known as Salahuddin Al-Ayyubi was soon became an inspiration to Muslims because of his attitude which was feared by his enemy. He is a well-known warrior who is described as one of the greatest warriors in the world, very polite, gentle, human, agile, intelligent and brave. And it's now I want to tell about the biography of Salahuddin Al-Ayyubi. The real name is Yusuf bin Ayyub and date of birth is 1130x Masihi, and he lived at city of Tarkid, Iraq, which is part of the west bank of the Tigris River, located between Baghdad. And father's name is Najm ad-Din Ayyub, and he died at 1193 Masihi, and he has a specialties in politics and military. Okay, for the education, at 40 years old, he studied in Damascus in Sunni technology. And he studied Arabic grammar, rhetoric and Islamic theology and began by studying the Al-Quran, Hadith, jurisprudence, Nahu, Date and Adab. He also involved and learned the sport of hunting and horseback riding, throwing arrows and training in war operation. His father also taught him chivalry, swimming, martial art. And he learning a political skill from his father, and he joining a military training, although he preferred to study a religious knowledge. That's all from me. Thank you.
The Second Crusade War. This slide will discuss a chronological summary of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi's success in opposing the Crusaders. First, the emergence of the Second Crusade was a string of the First Crusade in which the fall of Edessa or Arroha to Muslim. Next, in 507 Hijrah, the Christians had hired a member of Hashashiyun to kill Maudud bin Tuntakin after realizing their condition was in danger when Maudud deployed a military force heading to Al-Quds. Next, Maudud's struggle to liberate Al-Ruha from the shadow of the cross has been continued by Imaduddin Zanki in 539 Hijrah. He started the movement his conquest on 1 Muharram 522 Hijrah. After a few months, he was appointed and became ruler of Mosul by capturing Aleppo, Kota Sarja, Dara, and Al-Sarib fortress from the Crusaders. The perseverance of the Mujahideen and the unity of the Islamic forces under the leadership of Nuruddin Zanki after the death of his father was successful in breaking the efforts of the conquest of Sham as well as the occupation of Damascus by the Crusaders in 542 Hijrah under Louis VII and Conrad III. Nuruddin had liberated Egypt from the influence and power of the Ubaidiyah, which has been under their control for almost 2 centuries with the help of 2 reliable soldiers, namely Asaduddin Shirkuh and his brother son Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Next, Salahuddin had inherited many armies in addition to owning the Egyptian army itself, as well as the war forces by the Sultan of Morocco by conquering the Karak fortress in 578 Hijrah. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi's prowess in fighting the Crusaders was so obvious during the Hittin War. This battle is going on Saturday, 14 Rabiul Akhir, but the reality took place on Friday. Salahuddin's next mission before heading to Islamic Jerusalem was to liberate the districts of Tebenin, Shaida, Askelon, Gaza, the Temple of Gabriel, and Nazrun in 583 Hijrah. Salahuddin has moved on with his troops to liberate Islamic Jerusalem and arrived at the location was on Sunday, 15 Rajab 583 Hijrah, and became a matter of delight to the Muslim forces as well as the Muslim entirely when the Muslim forces accepted the surrender of Al-Quds or Islamic Jerusalem on Friday, 27 Rajab 583 Hijrah from the Crusaders. Lastly, Salahuddin acted to clean the whole Al-Aqsa Mosque of any Christian element on 4 Sha'ban 583 Hijrah, and this was the greatest victory that was logged in the page of Islamic history, where the first Friday prayers were performed by Muslims in that place after being at the hand of Crusaders for a long time.
The Third Crusade War, Siege of Acre, is the one of the first confrontation in the war between the Crusade and Sultan Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, the former king of Jerusalem, Guy de Lissaune, attacking the city with the military aid from the Europe. However, the Ayyubic garrison of the city repelled every attack easily at first, but longer the war, it meant that the less moral to the Ayyubic garrison to defend the city. With continuous supply of this from the sea, every attack hits harder and harder, but still the garrison able to repel every attack. Every wall that have been breached, repaired by the engineer of the city. To stop the pattern of the attack, as soon as Sultan Salahuddin arrived at the scene, he struck the crusade camp. The tide of war began to change after the arrival of Richard the Lionheart, Philip II, and the other Christian kingdom. They brought with them a huge war machine and destroyed the wall of Acre with a huge rock. With no choice, the garrison of the Acre have to surrender, and the defeat of the Sultan Salahuddin. The Battle of Ashraf. This remain happened after the victory of Acre, forcing Philip II and the other Christian kingdom back to Europe. Crusader force began moving south, led by King Richard I to capture Jaffa, then Jerusalem. They carefully marched along the sea to avoid same thing happened at Athens. Salahuddin launched a series of harassing attacks followed by failed retreats, with a goal to compelling the Crusaders to break formation. Not working, Salahuddin began to focusing his effort on the Crusader left, where the Hospitallers located. Miscalculation happened, and the Hospitallers knight counterback. At the end of the day, hard defeat for the Sultan. The Battle of Jaffa. After the Battle of Ashraf, both prepared and strengthened their armies. Richard I capturing the nearby city and castle and settled a small conflict in the crusade. He was in Acre, planning his return to England, when Sultan Salahuddin attacked Jaffa but not overtook its castle in late July 1192. Heard the news, Richard arrived unexpectedly by the sea from Acre with the big forces. Saw the king Salahuddin retreat from Jaffa. Big battle happened between them. Unfortunately, Ayyubid forces cannot penetrate the big forces of the Crusaders. The Richard I won the battle. After that, on September 1192, a treaty of peace had been signed for 3 years of peace between the two forces. Sultan Salahuddin remained controlled in Baitul Maqdis but agreed to allow unweaponed Christian pilgrims to enter the city. The Crusade, however, were to tow the narrow coastal strip between Jaffa and Tyre.
Now let's proceed for the leadership of Sultan Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. The first one is the warm-hearted of Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, the loving and compassionate Salahuddin was suffering from the severe illness that made it difficult for him to get up, and sometimes he could not sleep due to the enduring pain. But when the morning came, he would ride a horse to fight the enemy. He sent his children to the battlefield before ordering others to do so. In endurance, it feels like no one can match Salahuddin. Salahuddin was told that he always listened to the recitation of hadith in his spare time instead of during the war. The spirit of jihad, Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Salahuddin's fierce zeal for jihad against the Crusader has become jihad to be his favorite topic of discussion. He always devoted to all his energy and strengthening his army, looking for the mujahids and weapons for the purpose of jihad. On the battlefield, he is like a mother who violently loses her only child because of being killed by an evil hand. He will move from one end on the battlefield to the other to remind its soldier that the true jihad is in the way of Allah. He will go to all corners of the country with the wide eyes to invite people to stand up and defend Islam. Obedient to Allah. He really liked the congregational prayer, or we call in Arabic as-salatul Jum'ah. Even when he was sick, he was forced himself to stand behind the prayers, because prayer is the main worship established by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He always performed the night sunnah prayer. He never stayed for the obligatory prayers, and Salahuddin never left the fast of Ramadan except once he advised by the Qadi al-Fadil on the battlefield. Qadi al-Fadil. On the battlefield, he often sat listening to the recitation of Al-Quran by the guards, and he visited until 3 or 4 juzu. Salahuddin was very confident and believed in Allah. He used to put all his hopes to Allah, especially when in trouble. Next is the generosity of Salahuddin. The generosity and the kindness of Salahuddin is sometimes he even gave the newly conquered areas to his followers. Salahuddin never let his guests leave him without a gift or any form of token of appreciation. Even though his guest was an infidel, King Saida once visited Salahuddin, and he greeted him with the open arms, treated him with respect, and took the opportunity to explain Islam. He never pays zakat because he does not have enough nisab property. He was very generous and would donate what he had to the poor and to the needy until he died. He only had 47 dirham of silver money and 1 dinar of gold money because he left no property. He gave all his property for the way of Allah. Next is adopting a policy of tolerance towards Christians. A characteristic of leadership that has always been practiced in the crusade is the attitude of adopting a policy of tolerance towards Christians. Also, the attitude of tolerance creates the understanding and avoid the occurrence of protests and extremist attitude from the Christians. Salahuddin al-Ayyubi has practiced this policy of tolerance toward Christians by giving them the opportunity to portray his noble personality. It is not easy to bring the nature of this policy of tolerance in this ethic war, but to preserve the name and the dignity of the past religions, the policy is prioritized and highlighted to achieve the aspiration and dreams that want to be realized.
Salahuddin al-Ayyubi has shown that the leadership of Islamic figures is not a factor in the past, but it has a huge impact on the formation of Islam and the peace of the Islamic State. There are many lessons to be learned from the superior leadership of Islamic figures who are willing to shed blood to welcome the call of Allah and sacrifice for the sake of the beloved religion of Islam. The history of the war involving Salahuddin al-Ayyubi to defend the region, elevate the shi'ar and defeat the enemies who are oppressed the Muslim in his time should be remembered and used as a lesson, psychologically as well as physically, to undermine the sovereignty and integrity of Islam.